Workforce Connections podcast, where we discuss workforce development in Southern Nevada. Here's your host.
Hi, and welcome to the WC podcast. Today's episode, we have a very special guest, President of UNLV, Dr. Keith Whitfield. Keith, welcome to the podcast.
Very good to be here, Jaime.
And you are a friend of Workforce Connections already. I remember you hit the ground running when we first met you. We've already started to work on some initiatives. You've made your staff very available to us to work on industry sector partnerships. One of the things, Keith, that you exemplify is a spirit of collaboration. And so I know that I'm not the only one that sees that. Our other colleagues on the LVGEA, Dr. Jesus Jara, Dr. Federico Zaragoza, Dr. Dirian Pollard, I think we all are grateful that you're here, and we're looking forward to all the great collaboration that we're going to have together in the next year. So with that, I wanted to ask you a few questions. Number one, as you know, we're evolving into a skills-based economy. Now, that doesn't mean that we still don't need the academic structure that we've had, because we still need doctors and engineers and architects and all those, if you will, occupations. But there are different levels of post-secondary talent acquisition now. And as you know, with Workforce Connections, one of our main goals is to make sure that there is the right talent pool for our employers here locally. And you're our partners in that. So first of all, how has the past couple of years affected how UNLV does enrollments and how it produces that talent pipeline?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I want to take one half a step back and say the people that you just mentioned are actually, collaboration doesn't work if there's not somebody on the side of the table that wants to collaborate with you. And so Superintendent Jara and Dr. Pollard and Dr. Zaragoza, it's been interesting that we all carry forward that same kind of sense of collaboration, and that we have our own institutions, we have our own entities that we have to run and operate, but that there's so much we can do as we partner together and use limited resources together to actually make a difference, and I think we're going to be successful. But relative to your question, we have been doing a little bit of everything, trying to make sure that we keep college first and foremost in front of young people's minds as one of the opportunities. One of the other populations that we're doing more with, but we've still got to do more. And that's it has lots of different names to it, but it's adults with some college but no degree. And we want to try to engage them if they've got ideas for things that they want to do to be able to advance themselves in their career or maybe make a career change. Sometimes that they need that 4-year degree, and we want to make sure that they understand that UNLV is a good place to do that.
Yeah, and I like that there is I never thought about that. I always thought, there's the people with no college, and then the people, of course, with college, but there is probably a large number of people that have some level of college, and so you're focusing on trying to increase their engagement with you.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I have not gotten the exact numbers around here, but one estimate is something like 300,000.
That's a lot.
And so it's a lot of people. And what we understand at UNLV is some of those people are our people. Some of those people came from California, they came from other places. But we want to make sure that they think about UNLV as one of those options depending on what they're interested in doing for the future. And even engaging UNLV to think about what they want to do for the future, and does that make sense? How much training will it take? That's one of the things that I've always appreciated about you, is that around the idea of workforce, that there's just multiple levels. There are some things that an associate's degree, or actually a certificate, is a perfect thing to be able to engage and be able to find other job opportunities and things that are changing in our economy. There's other things that need an associate degree. There are other things that need a 4-year degree. And just as you said, like doctors, there are ones that need advanced training as well. And all of those things are workforce. I think sometimes we forget that. We think about the welders and plumbers. Yeah, they're essential, but there's lots of things that all are about workforce, that if we pay attention to it, do it right, support the aspirations of people and being able to find ways to be able to get them trained, find opportunities for them, that we're going to make our economy across the valley better.
And I love to sit down when you guys are talking about that, again, the colleagues that you mentioned, because at the end of the day, at the last dinner I attended with you all, we all use different terms, but what employers are looking for is talent. And I heard you and Dirian, and Jesus all say, yeah, talent. It's all talent development. And we all agreed that it starts with Jesus at K through 12. We send our kids to school, not just to get a certificate, but to make them self-sufficient one day so they can be, take care of themselves. So that's the earliest piece of the pipeline in the talent development realm. Keith, I came here to Las Vegas in 1987, and there was only 375 people in this valley. The best part of it was that I, as an immigrant, wanted to learn better English or get better command of the language, and so I enrolled in ESL at UNLV. And one of the coolest things that happened to me, because in South America, basketball isn't big, it's soccer, but one of the students told me, hey, have you bought your ticket for tonight's game? I can't remember if it was $1, but it was really cheap. And so I went to my first basketball game at the Thomas and Mack, and lo and behold, the team had Larry Johnson and Anderson Hunt and Stacey Augman. And so I was fortunate to see that generation of UNLV basketball that made its mark nationally, won a national championship. And so, I always wanted to have a rebel in the family, if you will. And so my daughter gave me that pleasure. I know you've heard this story.
Wow. Yeah.
My daughter came back from California after a basketball scholarship and enrolled in the Doctorate of Physical Therapy program at UNLV, graduated almost 2 years ago now. And so I do have a rebel in my family. I actually have a T-shirt that I will not throw away because my daughter says it has holes, but it says UNLV Physical Therapy, and I told her it's the most expensive T-shirt I've ever, but one that I wear very proudly. And so, again, I saw her. The reason I tell you that story is because I saw my daughter graduate virtually. You remember the pandemic, all these adjustments. She graduated virtually. I also observed many students across the nation, perhaps the world, attend classes virtually. So the question would be, Keith, are we past that era where, we were forced into this pandemic situation? Are we going back to business as usual, or is there a new normal, or is it somewhere in between?
Yeah, it's so funny, Jaime, because the new normal, people don't like it now. They don't like that as an adage, but there's going to be a new normal. We're not going to go back to where we were before. We cannot undo what has been done. We cannot unexperience what's been experienced. And in higher ed, one of the challenges is trying to figure out how much of what we learned from that, hey, we can do things remotely. Hey, there's some advantages to it. I think especially for our population who we have most of our students don't live on campus. And so they are always coming from someplace. So even for them trying to arrange a life, having a little bit of flexibility is actually a good thing. And so there's the positive that. For our faculty, interestingly enough, some of them, they're good teachers, and for whatever reason, when they get behind the camera, they shine. They're even better. And so it's trying to figure out for who actually instruction works better, both on the student side and for the faculty side, and trying to figure out we could get off on this, and I could talk about it for forever. Looking and thinking about operations for the university. Are there ways in which we should bring people together and close a building because we don't have as many people with that same footprint? We were just talking today about remote work policies of working a couple of days at home, and because people got used to it. And so we're never going to completely undo it, but higher ed, the challenge is trying to figure out how much of that do we take going forward. For UNLV, at least, while I'm at the helm, we are an in-person, we're a brick and mortar sort of place. We're not going to be a completely online university, but we want to grow our online. We want to not only grow our online where people are someplace else, we want to bring more people from someplace else to us. We want to grow our international students. And so all of that is mixed in with this new reality that we're dealing with and trying to figure out how you use technology to actually even make some of those situations even better. Like, for example, there's these fascinating things for PowerPoint now where it will speak different languages. So as you can imagine, we are tied for the most diverse campus in the country, and the large part, actually, we're a majority institution with 33% of our students being Hispanic. Wouldn't it be great if anybody who wanted to turn on the little teleprompter could have Spanish going past while they're speaking? There's little things like that we're trying to figure out all the new technological advances that have come out and try to figure out how then you make the best college experience with that.
You mentioned something really meaningful, that we are tied for the most diverse university in the nation. Did I hear you correctly?
I don't like to talk about it because I like to just say that we're the most diverse.
Yeah.
But there's 3 other schools, and I can't even remember which ones they are because I pay attention to UNLV. But we've been for a long time in the top 5. But I think last year we were 2 or 3, and this year we're tied with a bunch as the most diverse. And there's some other piece of it, because actually if you look at NSC has a very diverse population as well. I think it's that, Research One institution. We're one of only 21 Hispanic serving institutions. That's a Research One institution in the country. That makes us also very unique. And so, we have that moniker that we're actually very, very proud of, in part because it just means that we have a diverse campus. And I had a student who's got such smart students. They were like, well, that's just about the numbers. What does that really mean? I'm like, hey, that's a really good point. What it means is that you're going to come to a place where everybody isn't the same. And there's an opportunity to learn when you're learning from people who are different from you. And one of the things that's my hope, and again, we have an incredible faculty at UNLV, that we do more of this, is trying to figure out a way that you put difference into the curriculum. So there should be more team working sorts of situations where you're going to work with somebody who they're from, Simi Valley and they grew up in a single family home, and I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and all of these people come together and they start sharing their experiences. That will produce a better educated student by having that diversity.
Absolutely. And I'm glad to hear that, Keith, because I worked for 20 years in the hospitality industry here on the Strip before this, working for Workforce Connections, and it is the most diverse workforce in the world there on the Strip, people from all over the world. And so it's great to hear that UNLV and Nevada State College is mirroring that. And before I ask you my next question, it's so interesting you mentioned Simi Valley, because that's where my daughter spent 4 years in college. I used to go watch her play there in Simi Valley. What a beautiful area. My next question has to do, again, with the future workforce. Again, Dr. Jar, our superintendent, you and I sit on the LVGA. We've heard about the workforce blueprint. We've heard about these 7 industry sectors that we as a region are targeting to diversify our economy. And again, it's our job, all of us, to make sure that these employers have that sustainable talent pipeline that, again, starts with Jesus and goes all the way to you and more. And so we're doing some things already. I don't know if you knew this, but in a few weeks, we will be opening, CCSD will be inaugurating a brand new career technical academy on the site of the old Bishop Gorman High School on Maryland Parkway. It is the first school in the nation, and let me say that again because it's really important. No other school in the nation was designed and built to have a American Job Center or one of Workforce Connections' one-stop centers there on site. So the young people and their families will have access to our resources. They won't have to go on a bus and come to another one of our locations. It will be right there. And it's the first time, again, in the nation. So there are some great things that are happening. I know you've read about it, too. About a month ago, we were in the paper because Votech, or SECTA, if you will, was named the #1 magnet school in the nation. It's right here in our valley. And so we have a lot of work to do, but I think some things are worth celebrating. But how can we do more? Again, how can we make sure that this K through 12 pipeline aligns with what you're doing at UNLV and Nevada State College and CSN, and more importantly, all of it aligns with what the needs of industry are today and in the future?
So there's at least a couple of different perspectives to that, and one is that they start in the K through 12, but that shouldn't be that all they experience is the K through 12. One of my hopes is that we're able to both my institution as well as our little confederacy of folks work together to have more summer programs to be able to help students across the year. Just guess it's personally, one of the things that I worry about is that we have students that become, they're interested in something, but there's no outlet for that interest. There's no outlet for that ambition. And I think summer programs are just one possible way. They're one way in many things need to be in place, but it's one of those things where you can keep that student's energy and excitement and talent that we're developing in them if we can have more experiences. And I want to have more of those at UNLV, and I want to have more that are connected so that we create, we use this analogy of a pipeline, but it's a pipeline that has like 50 different connectors to it because students have different ideas of what they want to do. It changes over time, and we want to make sure that we're places that are actually really good for choosing some of those other opportunities and pursuing whatever it may be. I think the other piece about it of trying to figure out what industry really needs, and I would say our engineering program, and others too, but the engineering one just sticks out. They're doing that. It's a tough little dance. Academics are trained, and we know all of this stuff, and so we think we know what students need. But it's your point of that, well, industry has needs too. And so it's been difficult, but like I said, our engineering program is doing a really good job at trying to figure out and working with industry to say, what are the skills that you actually need for the kinds of jobs that you're doing? I can remember one conversation going on, and it was about how people were actually using data and collecting data and using Excel. And it's like, well, we have that in our first grand challenges class or something like that, but they needed to learn how to do this one little thing in it, and so they've added it to it. So those students are going to be better prepared maybe for an internship before they go off, and maybe then getting a job later on because we've taken elements of what, and they have to be things in common. It can't just be what one particular sector needs. It has to be overall of basic kinds of skills that our students need for the 21st century. And so we're doing that. We just need to do more of it. We need to do more of it in other areas other than engineering of understanding those things. And then I would add one of the things that I think we're doing more universally, it's not by a college or a department, is the idea that in my experience, I've worked with Google and Amazon and that group before and gone out to California and talked to them. And what I was amazed at was, and I asked the person to repeat it because I didn't believe it. They said, well, we really don't care what degree they get. Don't you want them to have computer science? Well, yeah, that's good, but we have people in English and in biology. And I said, well, so what makes a successful person? And what they said is that, well, it's pretty good if they learn Python. I think that it's the program du jour right now, and it may even change. They said, but more than anything else, we need people that actually have what I like to call emotional intelligence. I don't just call it that. But it's those other kinds of soft skills. But you don't learn those in a traditional class, or you can, I don't think we have a lot of classes that specifically teach that. But we want our students to have those other kinds of experiences where they get to learn those sorts of things. I just mentioned to you that I was at the Latino Youth Leadership Conference, and a couple of the points that I was making is that, when you get out there and get to do stuff, you'll learn those kinds of soft skills. But one of the things that we're struggling with the pandemic is sitting in your room all by yourself, maybe being on camera for a few seconds. It's not going to be the same. We need you to learn those other things because they are going to turn into jobs, because there are other skills where you take the technical information and you learn how to work with people, because problems don't get solved all by yourself for the most part. You need to be able to work with a team, to be able to communicate, to manage with your professionals, manage conflict, all of those kinds of things. And so we as a university are actually taking on that and making like little certificates that students can get. And what I like about it is it's free. It's not something you got to pay tuition for, but you got to take the time to invest in doing it.
That's really good, Keith. In a time where you hear a lot of complaining that academia is not listening and that they're out of date, it's great to hear that UNLV is, when they're trying to solve the supply-demand equation, is really listening to the demand side and focusing on that. That's fantastic. Good for our region. You have, as we did a little research on you, you have authored and co-authored over 200 publications and raised or been awarded over $20 million from multiple organizations in your work. But your current research focuses on the relationship between stress and longevity in African American families. We all know there's been a lot of stress over these past 2 years on all families, but in this particular case, we would love to hear a little bit more about this very unique research. Why did you pick it, and what do you hope to get out of it when you're done?
Oh, I mean, you're killing me, man. You got to remember, I'm the president of UNLV, but I'm still a professor at heart and in my mind. And so when you set that up, I'm ready to give you an hour-long conversation. I'll give you the short piece of it. I think you hit on something where when we started that study, we really weren't predicting a pandemic. But it is the idea that stress actually is connected to many poor health outcomes, and particularly in African Americans. And when you look at it over time, you see that it's just kind of consistent that there's this difference. And so one of the hypotheses that I have is that, stress to some degree is learned. And so where do you learn it from? Guess what? You learn it within your family. And it's funny too, because you can always have that brother or sister that, wow, they're completely different. They don't see the world like mom and dad taught us to see the world or whatever. But more times than not, you see lots of similarities. And so we're taking a look and seeing among siblings and also between kids and their parent, how much they're alike in terms of how they perceive stress, how they perceive discrimination, what their health is like, how resilient they are, lots of different things, and trying to look at similarities and see if those are more similar within families than if you were not related at all. So some of the things that we've been finding, and we are really just shutting down the data collection piece and starting the analytical piece. And that is that you do find some similarities of stress. And I'm sorry, I got to give you the other piece of it. So one of the interesting pieces is that we've got two different types of families. There's a short-lived family where the parents have passed away, typically from, and it's their stress-related illnesses, cardiovascular disease, even cancer, diabetes. All of those have a stress component to them. And then we have the longer-lived families where we have siblings and then their parent participates. And sure enough, so far what we find is that the families that are in the long-lived ones report less stress. So, we're just getting our feet, kind of set to figure out how all of this actually translates. But thinking that as well, part of this, because it's a study of longevity to some degree. And it's interesting, in our long-lived families, these are people in their 80s and 90s and 100s who have lived, and this is in a group that's predicted to live shorter lifespan. So you kind of ask the question, hey, what are they doing? Because if they're supposed to live shorter, but they live longer, what is it about what they may eat, how they think about the world, how they perceive the world? What is it, can we figure out what is it that may make them different than other folks who in families actually don't live as long? The genetics is a piece of it. I do dabble and do stuff with genetics, but it's the behavioral and social stuff that I'm most interested in and I'm most curious about as to seeing how that's going to contribute to the health and longevity of people. And my ultimate goal is that while we're studying African Americans, it's just because they're a perfect population, because they have for men in particular, have the lowest life expectancy. So people who live really long, they're really exceptional survivors. So trying to figure out, if we can figure out what some of the things are there, we can test them in other populations and see if the same kinds of relationships, same kinds of factors hold.
Wow. First of all, that's fascinating, but I really enjoyed seeing you just light up about your research. That was fantastic. Like you said, you have a role, but I really could tell, and a role that you do very well. We're very lucky to have you, but I could tell how your passion just ignited when we talked about this, and so I'd love to continue to hear next time we go to lunch more about that.
Oh, you got to get my next paper. I've got to get a paper out before the end of the year. I think I only have 2 or 3 this year.
Okay.
I am a different kind of president, because everybody doesn't do this, and it's honestly, it ties in with what you do, which is that even I was a provost previously. I kept publishing, whereas other people, president job, administrative jobs are big jobs, but I just refused to give that up. And I was collaborating so much that some of the collaborations that I set up, they're producing publications. So, I had 6 or 7 last year. Probably going to get 3 or 4 hopefully this year. But I think what's so interesting is, and this is what I have heard from you on a number of occasions, we're looking for talent, and what we've got to do is to figure out how we can take their passion and tie it to talent. That's the reason I'm fascinated by it. And so I can switch off and be the little nerdy academic person, and then I have to switch on and think about a university. But I keep that other piece of it because I'm passionate about it. But also I'm passionate about the presidency stuff too. Somebody asked me today, when is it the best? There's hard days and bad days. When is your best days? my single best days, there's usually 3 or 4 of them, is graduation, is when we see those young people, and not even not so young people, actually get across the finish line. That's what all of what we strive, we strategize, we think about, we're predicting, that's what it's for. And what I like about what you've said, because I feel like it's how I live, and that is that if you get to do stuff that you're passionate about, oh my gosh, there's no better life. But your passions can change over time too. And that's the reason why lifelong learning is important. And you've said these same things to me before, and it's why, I'm one of your biggest fans. But I think it is that passion piece. I think if we can get people connected with their passion, then you get somebody who's doing great things in terms of the workforce, they're taking care of their family, they're doing all those things, and they really enjoy what they're doing. They're not, people, like for me, it's more than a job. But everybody doesn't get the benefit or the blessing that I have to have this incredible job and this incredible opportunity. But I want to get as many people as they can doing stuff that they really actually are passionate about, because I know it's made a difference in my life.
I so much appreciate that you said that, because I know as we've gotten to know each other, we have common passions. Food's one of them. We both like good food, and we've been. You
know better restaurants than I do, though. That's why I like to hang out with you.
You're going to get to know them all, but I really love that you picked up on that, because hopefully one day you meet my daughter too. But she every day texts me, Keith, about her day, because she's passionate about physical therapy and sports and high performance, and I'm so grateful that she is in a place where work doesn't seem like work, that she gets fulfillment, and if we could find a way to connect everybody to their passion, what a greater place it would be. As we near the end of the podcast, I wanted to kind of project to the future, because you got here in the most complicated of times. I mean, we all felt, oh my gosh, how is Keith going to handle this? And you did marvelously through the challenges. You're bringing us out now really strong. We all hear and know that UNLV has over the past few years built some really good assets, the new football center and, multiple new buildings. But I would like to hear from you, if you were to project 5 years, what do you see at UNLV? I mean, the Tier 1 thing was great. What are the things that Keith wants to see happen at UNLV in the next 5 years?
Well, see, I have to be careful, because I'm deathly afraid that some of my cabinet, some of our faculty are listening, and they'll say, he wants to do what? Oh, my gosh. It's funny. I came in August of 2020, so, we were 6 months into the pandemic, something like that. And in some ways, it actually wasn't the worst time in the world to start, believe it or not, because it was smaller. Yeah. So it was a little easier to get your head around, a 30-plus thousand student institution with 4,000 or 5,000 faculty and staff, trying to get your head around all of it. And that Vegas, this is a very unique place. Putting it together, it actually helped to almost be going a little bit slower. But it also tantalized me about what's possible here. There is so much possible in this valley. There's so much possible at UNLV. And our struggle is, and I guess it's easy for me because I haven't been here trying to do this for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. And so I can have outrageous ambition about tons of things that we can do. So for example, our engineering program, I'll cite it again, has grown about 120% in the last 10 years. I want to see if we can grow it another like 40%, because I think there's a lot of jobs that need engineers. Our nursing program is absolutely incredible. It's one of the best ones, both I think it's the online one and the in-person one. Just top notch. I'd like to be able to grow that, because again, that's another in-demand, you tell me all the time, in-demand occupation that would be great to grow. But there's other things that we're doing as well that honestly, there's a long list, but I'll give you a couple of my favorites. One of my favorites is around economic development. I know from having talked to folks that economic development has been talked about for forever, of that, during the downturn, people said, oh yeah, Vegas, we need to diversify our economy. But I think this has been something, the pandemic has been something that really challenged folks. And one of the things that your higher ed institutions can do, and particularly UNLV, is be able to help not only help kind of the executive, but also be able to help the young entrepreneur or the new entrepreneur that's there. And so one of the things that's happening out at our research park the Harry Reid Research and Technology Park, and it's being led by Bo Bernhardt, who is just amazing. But we started off with like a handful of companies. There's over 100 companies that are out there. This is a place that people want to come to. I think there were a lot of Vegans that thought, it's really just a hotel. No, there's a lot of things that are attractive about coming to Las Vegas, and that if we can help grow them, we think everybody's going to benefit. Now, we'll benefit because our students will have, more jobs to be able to go to. They'll have experiences from people that are in industry and just outside of Las Vegas, so that you get a worldview of things. There's lots of benefits that can happen to that, but that's something that we have been investing in, and we're going to continue to invest and have more pieces, and you're going to see that research park grow. I think when you said 5 years, is like, oh, okay. I'd like to see us change our curriculum ever so slightly. I think that if we could add the idea of doing research or community service together with it, and it's at the same time, we don't need to add any more hours to getting a degree. So it's a tough thing, because you say, well, I need to teach the students all these things, but we want to have these other experiential things happen for them. And so that's something that I know the provost is interested in working on, we're trying to do. And then the last thing I'll say, because again, we can go on forever, one of the things that we're embracing is the idea that for all institutions of higher ed, we're trying to teach people and train people for jobs that don't exist. When you're real about that, it starts to scare you, because you're like, well, I've always just taught English, and this is what we've taught folks, or we've done biology, and this is what we've taught. But what are the intersections that people are going to run into? What are the different kinds of skill sets that people are going to have? And so the term lifelong learning gets used a lot, and that is life. We are going to have to continue. That's just the society that we live in. But what is it as a university we can do to try to train people to be ready for that lifelong learning, to be ready for those new kind of job opportunities that will come? And it's the lifelong learning. It's that, we want to train you to be able to learn, learning to learn. But in addition, we want you to think, maybe you go back to school for something, and that's not an odd thing to think about doing. But I think trying to make sure that we design an education at UNLV, it's already fantastic, but one that has some really good flexible points to it, so that people can make those shifts or even think about coming back if they need to. If they get in and they say, hey, I'm really passionate about this, I want to do more, come back and get those other skills that you need, and there may be different ways to deliver that. And so those are the kinds of things we're struggling with, but trying to figure out. But we're going to be there in 5 years. We're going to be an absolutely outstanding institution up and above what we already are. I'll tell you one last thing to conclude on that we're engaging in, and it's going to take some time to develop. But one of the things that we struggle with is we don't have enough diversity in our faculty. Now, this isn't just our problem. This is a national problem. There's a really small number of folks of color who go into higher ed, and so lots of schools have issues around diversity in their faculty. Well, we've joined with a group of the other 20 Research One Hispanic serving institutions to say, we're going to go after federal money, we're going to talk to our legislators, we're going to do anything we can to try to produce more PhDs, really encourage them to go into academia, because you can do lots of other things with a doctorate degree or even a master's degree, but entice them to come into academia so that students coming through have someone that may look like them to be able to see when they take a class. And that's something that we think we're going to move the needle on by the time we get down the road in 5 years.
Well, after listening to you, Keith, the future is nothing but bright at UNLV. You can count us in as your partners. I love how you, part of the reason when we are successful, I think, is because we have great teams behind us. And you mentioned, Bo Bernard and Jamie Schwartz over there at that building. That building is fantastic. I don't know how many people know that Blackfire building, but when you go there, whether it's the robot following Bo around or the sheets that don't, that regenerate, that building is amazing. And so I think that, like you said, the future is bright for UNLV. And again, Workforce Connections will be your partner wherever you need us. I will call you because you mentioned nursing, and in my mind, there's a grant that just came out to scale up nursing programs. And so I'm going to call you today or tomorrow. You can connect me with, again, the right member of your staff so that we can partner.
Angela Amar is is unbelievable. She is fantastic. And so I would love to connect. And she's always, already, like all of us are, always looking for more resources. So
Great. We'll do that. Keith, thank you for being here today with us at the WC podcast.
Well, and thank you for, I've been here just about 2 years now. And you were one of the first persons that connected with me, and it made a difference in me being able to understand and get my feet set and to understand the incredible potential that's here, the great people that are in the Valley, and the great work that you guys do. It is still, I think, underappreciated. But I will say from my perspective, from UNLV's perspective, we really appreciate all the work that you're doing and want to be a future partner in more things.
We look forward to it, Keith. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's it for another episode of the WC podcast. We hope to see you at the next one. Until then, stay safe. Well, Keith, thank you for staying over and doing our bonus segment called Against the Wall. Are you ready?
I'm ready for you.
All right. The first segment is called Your Favorite. So I'm going to give you a category, and you're going to give me your favorite one. So your favorite subject in college.
Oh, my favorite subject in college would have had to have been philosophy.
Your favorite book you've read.
Favorite book I've read, Call of the Wild.
The favorite movie you've watched.
Just recently I saw Maverick, and so that is my current favorite.
Yeah, that's a good one. Your favorite city to visit.
Favorite city to visit is Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Ooh, I'm going to Colorado Springs in 2 weeks.
Oh, I'll tell you where to go.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna get you to give me some spots. Your favorite food.
There's my favorite food, and then there's the food that I should be eating. But I love a good I'll just say I love a good hamburger.
Oh,
I love a good steak too.
Yes. What temperature of the steak?
Medium well.
Oh, yes. All right. Favorite artist or musical group?
Favorite artist or musical group? I would have to say Michael Jackson.
Oof. King of pop. Favorite holiday?
My favorite holiday? I would say Christmas, not because I get presents, but because I get to give presents.
All right. That's very nice. Now, this one, you got to be careful because it's your favorite pro sports team. Think about Sandra Douglas Morin.
Pro sports team. That's hard because I have two. And one is the obvious one, which is the Raiders. And I loved them anyway. And then they hired Sandra Morgan. Holy mackerel. But the other favorite team I have that's pro is the Aces. They play basketball like when I was younger, I wish I could, or I thought that I could, but I was never that good. But just seeing them play is absolutely amazing. They're smooth, they're talented. I love watching the Aces.
Yeah,
actually, I'm going to go see the Aces this evening.
Good. That's awesome. At Mandalay Bay. All right, you've made it through the first segment. The second one is called Tough Choices. So I'm going to give you two alternatives, and you're going to pick one. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. Would you rather vacation in the U.S. or abroad?
U.S.
Would you rather play sports or watch sports?
Watch.
Tough one for you. Basketball or football?
Basketball.
Are you a tea person or a coffee person?
A team person or a...
I'm sorry, coffee or tea?
Oh, mostly tea.
Okay. Would you rather owe money or owe a favor?
I would rather owe money.
Yep, that's why this category is called Tough Choices. Here comes another tough one. Justice or grace?
Which one do I favor? Which one do I...
Yeah, which one would you...
Probably grace.
And then last one, actions or words?
Oh, actions.
Yep. All right, you finished the segment Tough Choices. You're rounding around the corner of the final stretch, and it's called Finish the Sentence. I'm going to give you 90% of a sentence, and you're going to finish it up. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
If Keith could live anywhere, it would be...
Las Vegas, Nevada.
Good answer. Keith's favorite thing about his job is
Helping people, one, to follow their passion, but two, to discover they could do more than what they thought they could.
That's awesome. The best part of living in Southern Nevada is
I was going to say the heat, but that would just be a big joke. It's not the heat, but it is the beauty that's here. I always think that a lot of times people don't realize this is an absolutely gorgeous place to live.
Have you gotten out to the outdoors?
Only a little bit,
You
not
need
enough.
more? All right. This one's good. Give me 3 words that describe, or let me read the sentence again. 3 words that describe Keith are
3 words. So not sentences, but words.
3 words that describe Keith.
3 words. Hardworking,
Yes,
compassionate,
I agree.
and a word. Aspirational.
Very good. Thank you. If Keith could travel back in time, he would travel to
If I could travel back in time, I would travel to 1971 or 2.
Oh, you're going to have to tell me about that story one day over lunch. And here's the final sentence. Doing the WC podcast today here with us was
Great fun.
awesome. Well, Keith, thank you for staying over and doing the bonus segment.